Brahman is a view of God that consists in all of reality, and by doing so it is not definable into separate parts, but is within all parts and pieces in this universal bubble that we seem to be existing within. The meta of all metaphysics, you could say, the ultimate reality of everything, permanent, unchanging, the most ultimate cosmic principle. Atman, on the other hand, is what is understood as the soul, the spirit, the breath, the liberated self, the truest form of one that is not defined, attached or understood through any material phenomena, and to attain that state is through what you call, or what they called in Hinduism, moksha, meaning liberation. Now, what is fascinating about this in relation to modern science is that we have slowly become orientated around these ideas in quantum physics that are merging Hindu and Vedantic religious belief with physics to make a kind of Veda-based science. Because what we have come to understand is this idea of quantum non-locality, which states that everything in reality is related to everything, basically. That distance doesn't matter, and that every single piece of the puzzle can influence other quantum particles as well. Because they all originate supposedly from this monadic wholeness. With the image of God being Brahman, which is that of something that is not packed into any specific dimension, it reinforces this understanding of non-locality. So again, as Brahman is the first principle, the cosmic principle that everything unfolds from, we can start to understand that Atman, or the soul, is again another investment of Brahman within the human body, the spiritual consciousness of the individual. It's not something containable, but is shapeless, timeless and transcendent. So for analogy's sake, if you think of someone dropping a stone or a pebble into a lake or a river or anything like that, you see the way in which reality manifests from the cause. The initial force of that pebble hitting the surface of the water and its effect is representative of what Atman is. But what you come to see is that the initial effect disperses out into the lake. It falls back into the original rhythm, which would be that of Brahman, the cosmic principle. Whether it be illusional or not, on any degree, it is how Atman exists in the material world, being a drop in the ocean of Brahman. It falls back into it. It falls back in on itself. Brahman always supersedes Atman because it is the foundation that gives Atman existence. It envelopes it, if you will. Another observation that connects this ancient philosophy with quantum physics is what was understood as Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, which is basically the realization that our own observation produces indeterminacy, similar to the replication crisis in psychology, but from a different perspective. What this guy found out was that when we try to precisely determine or figure out two properties of a particle at the same time, or try to attain knowledge of particular properties within a particle, being something like the trajectory of the particle and its position, observing the particle itself would influence a change by the individual, which would make our understanding of its knowledge indeterminate. For example, we could observe the particle via a particular microscope, but to actually see the damn thing, we need to beam photos onto it. That itself would influence the particle because it will take influence from another form of energy. But even some particles are kind of, like corpuscular or wave-like, which makes it impossible through mathematics to understand its trajectory or position accurately. So this all indicates that energy influences everything because everything is connected to everything by this phenomena. And the idea of quantum non-locality, that there is this unified field of connectedness, which fundamentally takes away this idea of individuality in its most strict sense, which, proposes something very problematic for most human research ever done. Because if we are always influencing everything, how can we grasp a scientific, objective understanding of anything we observe? But what makes this really interesting is the truth of participation, that the universe in some way or another was brought into being possibly only by forms of participation, which all relates pragmatically to things like, laws of attraction. Because the biggest factor to success, which I personally would say, is consistency. The only true way to try and manifest what you desire is through consistency, which is the prolonged extension of acting through participation with your reality, but also with the universe. That is what magic is. Magic is not something that is not true or not real. You have to actualize it through synthesis of the mind and body. That is how you actualize what you desire, which then leads it into the world. You may be talented, but talent does not beat consistency when it comes to attaining a particular form of success. It seems to always be the outlier that people fall under, because people seem to generally lack consistency the most when it comes to being the key ingredient, I think, for success. So this understanding of reality has been made and perpetuated, for example, through things like the digital world, the non-locality of the internet, making it all interconnected around the world in any place and time. You can watch this video from Zimbabwe to Chechnya or something, and then those connections can make even stronger connections with the non-digital world. How the internet acts as the unus mundus in a sense, because it's the gateway into the digital and viewing all things through the digital world. So again, this idea of a unified field in quantum theory is the same as the cosmic principle of Brahman. Even the illusions that Vedic texts talk about, like the delusion or illusion of limited attachment with the use of the mantra Ahum Brahmasmi, meaning I am Brahman, which has the intention to unify the macrocosmic reality of God with the individual experience. And these explanations of different forms of Maya raise the similarity to quantum physics with regards to the illusion that sense perception brings about through the means of observation. It comes to the question of what can reality actually be defined as or described as if what I perceive changes through my experience with it. This itself raises obviously the problem of consciousness, and the reason why we have meditation, I think, is in many ways an attempt to make experience empty of thought, empty of chatter. Because what is fear, for example? Fear is a form of thought that influences my experience with reality. That fear becomes my own personal illusion, originating from the past because it's a conditioned replacement where thought becomes the controller of my reality in the moment. When the head takes over in replacement of the body, if you will. Thus, meditation is an attempt to escape the illusion that thought is me. It's interesting to see it like this. You are that which questions your own thoughts. The real you, in a sense, is one who is observing oneself and not that which is entraining oneself with chatter. Because you entertain yourself automatically all day with thought automatically, but when you start to become the witness of your own mind, you then realize that that is how you gain control and not allow the thought to control you. Most conscientious people, for example, and this relates nicely into things like creativity and how thought can contradict or kind of play disadvantage to creativity, is that most conscientious people live in a world of strict, orderly thought, which becomes dictatory of their lives, which can be a very good example of how it can be used to be beneficial for things like the development or towards a particular type of career or to be successful in a type of discipline. But people who are high in openness are not as conscientious, but more liberal and creative. Which is an interesting example of how thought can be a disadvantage towards creativity. Because someone who is high in openness is usually less conscientious, less conservative, and is someone who doesn't use thought in a strict, orderly manner. Creativity requires openness, and to be open you have to be aware that you are a witness to your own mind, and not to be the thought itself that controls your actions or orders you into a specific paradigm for whatever you wish. You need flexibility and negotiation. So I think that's something really interesting, or a really interesting way to look at things if you're trying to be more creative and less dogmatic, to find that middle ground for development if that's how you want to develop your own personality in a sense. So if you enjoyed this video, give it a like, comment and subscribe. Sign up to my newsletter at thoughtsandthinking.org, where you can get updates on upcoming articles and new videos and things to read about that I post up on my website. So thanks for watching, and I'll speak to you in the next video.